This upcoming full moon in Taurus on November 15th, 2024 is asking us individually and collectively to make a change. The change that we're being asked to make is going to vary from person to person, but it is most likely something that is uncomfortable, that requires us to step outside of our comfort zone, and that we have been resisting for quite some time. In this video, we're going to discuss the nuts and bolts of this, the planets that are involved. We're also going to talk about the planets that are supporting us, both individually and collectively, in making this shift. So welcome to Cosmic Consciousness. Let's dig into this thing. Full moons always occur when we have an opposition going on between the sun and the moon. So in this case, we have the moon at 24 degrees of Taurus, conjunct Uranus at 25 degrees of Taurus, opposing the sun at 24 degrees of Scorpio. So we have this axis of Scorpio and Taurus being powerfully activated here. Some consider this the axis of wealth. I also look at it as the axis of enlightenment, as Scorpio represents the shadow, it represents the subconscious, it represents the places within our own psyche that we are afraid to tread, but that we must explore in order to fully understand ourselves, in order to fully love and accept ourselves, and in order to heal. Taurus, on the other end, represents the energy of present, the energy of being. And it also represents the material physical world, whereas Scorpio represents what is not seen, what is not understood, what is mysterious, elusive, hidden, and secret. So when we balance these two things out, when we learn and perfect the art of being, as well as the art of diving into the shadow of exploring the subconscious, we're really able to achieve this energy of enlightenment, or at least a more enlightened state of being. I personally believe that true enlightenment does not exist within this physical vessel. That is something that we strive to attain, and it is something that inspires us to keep growing, to keep evolving, whilst we are experiencing this human incarnation or experience. So it's a very powerful axis. It also deals with the physical world with that energy of Taurus. This is our material realm. This is our five senses. There is a powerful sense with this axis of fully understanding and submerging ourselves in the material world so that we can then transcend the material world and transcend materialism. I always love the analogy, or I guess it's not an analogy, that might be the wrong word to use here, but I love that a lot of people believe that Buddha was born a Taurus, because Buddha's journey of enlightenment really showcases the energy of Taurus, and in many ways, the energy of this axis. Buddha was born into a very affluent family, right? He had a lot of money. That material world was very much provided for him. And yet he wanted something deeper. He wanted to know himself. He wanted to know and understand the nature of existence. And so he went and he meditated and he went on this journey that ultimately brought him to this state of enlightenment and detachment. That's one of the major tenets of Buddhism, is that the energy of being and the energy of detachment. They do believe that desire is something that anchors us to this material realm, and it is something that must be overcome in order to know true peace. So when we look at that energy, we can very much see the energy and the journey of Taurus in particular. And any of my fellow Tauruses, I am a Taurus sun, so I relate to this energy very heavily, will understand this. Sometimes in the lower vibrations of Taurus, we get lost in the material world. We lose our footing, so to speak. We perhaps become hedonistic. We are very enthralled with our senses in the sensual nature of this world. And that is part of the journey, right? The illusion of being trapped in the five senses until we begin to explore and activate that sixth sense. And what helps us to activate that sixth sense? It is the energy of the opposing sign of Scorpio. That's the energy that beckons us further, that says, wait, there's more. There's more to explore beyond what you can feel, taste, smell, hear, and see. Are you ready to go deeper with me? The Scorpio energy is also that little nagging energy that kind of thwarts us from being able to be completely at peace, where we get to that ideal state of Taurian being, but we can't quite be comfortable in our own skin. That's when we have to dive into that Scorpio energy to understand why. When the material world does not satisfy us, when we're filling that void with all of the pleasures, the earthly pleasures, and still something is missing, that's when we call upon that Scorpio energy. So this is a very visceral, powerful axis. It also, as we said, deals with wealth. We've talked about Taurus representing the material world, materialism, what is ours, while Scorpio represents what is somebody else's. So this is inheritances. This is other people's money. This is the things that we acquire through other people. Not only the physical material things, but also the spiritual things when it comes to our lineage, when it comes to the inheritances that we have of a spiritual nature. So it's very powerful in that sense of understanding what is mine and what is ours. It is also the axis of sexuality, where we have that earthy, sensual, Taurian energy. And then we have that deep, intimate, scorpionic energy. Scorpio being, of course, the sign in the zodiac that is most connected to the sexual energy and the sexual experience. But Taurus, as we can see, is also very connected in. But Taurus is very much about the physical, sensual, bodily sensations and pleasures of sex, whereas Scorpio is about the ability to go deep, the ability to know someone on that deep, intimate level, and to truly bear our soul to another in a way that we really can't reach and access with another human being unless we connect with them in that manner. So it's a highly, highly active and powerful axis. And when we have full moons along this axis, it is especially powerful. The new moons are as well, but with a new moon, we have the sun and the moon conjunct, sharing their energy. So the energy is more concentrated on either the Scorpio or the Taurus end of the spectrum, unless we have a lot of other planets in the opposing sign, which kind of balance that out and make this axis more active. But when we have a full moon, we have the sun in one sign and the moon in the other. So we have the whole energy being covered here. Now, with this particular full moon, because we have the moon conjunct Uranus, the Taurus energy is the bigger player here. This is the stronger energy that we're focusing in on. And when we have Uranus active here, Uranus in retrograde at this time as well is bringing through these powerful themes and energies of change, of revolution, of breaking out of the box, breaking outside of the comfort zone. It's really urging us to explore in a similar way to Scorpio, right? To go deeper, but not necessarily in that emotional sense, unless that's where we need to go deeper. Yeah, unless that's where we need to go. It's pushing us to go where it is that we have been afraid to travel, whether that's into our emotional world, whether that's into another aspect of ourselves, whether that's into a new job, whether that's into a new version or vision of ourselves, wherever it is that we have been afraid or uncomfortable investing in ourselves. That's an interesting word that's coming through, where we're speaking with the money energy, right? The materialism or the material world energy, investing in ourselves. I like that. Where have you been afraid to invest in yourself? Where have you been afraid to push past the boundaries? Taurus energy very much represents the comfort zone. This is why it's so important that Taurus energy is opposed by Scorpio, because like we said, it's the Scorpio energy that pulls Taurus out of that comfort zone, that kind of entices or sometimes almost forces Taurus out of that by producing the discomfort that causes the need to change. And with Uranus, which represents change, also chaos, the unpredictable, this is a very active energy here. So what is that change that you've been afraid to make? Uranus entered the sign of Taurus back in 2018. So for some, this could quite literally be a change that you've known you needed to make, or you started becoming aware that you needed to make back in 2018. And perhaps you have been resisting all this time. Remember, Taurus energy is fixed earth, just as Scorpio energy is fixed water. So there is an energy of stubbornness here, even within the energy of Scorpio, even though Scorpio represents change and transformation. Scorpio also represents the process of resistance to change. And through that, we learn the lesson of surrender. We learn the lesson of releasing and letting go. So that's a huge theme here, this energy of surrendering, releasing, letting go of the status quo, letting go of the comfort zone, letting go of whatever it is that you, or wherever it is that you have fallen into an energy of stagnancy, of complacency, where you have been just comfortable enough to continue to resist the change. This full moon is going to add to that discomfort and really inspire us to make the shifts that we need to make moving forward. Another couple of really interesting things about this full moon is the fact that we have this aspect called a cradle going on right now. And this is a really beautiful aspect. It looks quite literally in the natal chart like a cradle. And there are a bunch of trines and sextiles going on here, which are very beautiful, supportive, positive aspects. So we have involved in this cradle the sun, the moon, Uranus as it is conjunct the moon, as well as Neptune and Pluto. So all of the outer planets here, with, you could argue, the two most personal of the personal planets, the sun being representing the totality of us, our energy, our life force, our desired purpose in this lifetime, the way that we want to show up, to shine, to fulfill our purpose, and the ultimate lessons that we want to learn. And the moon representing our deeper emotional nature, our instinctual nature, the parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily often show, but the parts that really truly make us who we are. This is our emotional conditioning. This is how we relate to people on that emotional level. This is our safe space. This also represents with the sun, our solar masculine energy and our lunar feminine energy. So the two most personal of the personal planets and all of the outer planets. So this is supporting us. The outer planets represent two things to me. They represent the collective. So we can see this as a massive collective shift, but they also represent the higher will of our soul. They represent our soul's higher will, the driving forces of desired change and evolution in this lifetime, and how it is that we can accomplish those. They also speak to us about our past lives, particularly Pluto and Uranus, about the past conditioning, the past trauma, about what we have experienced lifetime after lifetime. And they can help to show us how it is that our soul is seeking to, I don't necessarily want to say overcome that, but I guess you could say continue that process of growth and evolution in this lifetime. They truly are a connecting point to these larger cosmic energies and to our role in the greater cosmic web, you could say, perhaps. So this is a beautiful opportunity to change and transform on a soul level in a way that our soul has been seeking to change and transform for many lifetimes. These planets are also showing us in this cradle aspect, they're not only supporting us individually, they're supporting us collectively, and they're showing us how each soul's choices for their personal healing and evolution are impacting the greater collective. There's a massive collective shift in consciousness. And we talk about this, of course, this is the ascension. Everybody talks about this, but 2024 particularly being a quantum leap year where we are aligning with that highest timeline. We have aligned with it. We're on it right now. This is sort of like a final push for the individual and the collective towards where it is that we have been resisting aligning and identifying with that timeline, where we have essentially been resisting our soul, our higher will. And we've talked about this in recent videos with the opposition of Pluto and Mars and how that was the lower will or the human ego will versus the higher will represented by Pluto. We still have that opposition going on. It's not as intense now. We have Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn still until the 19th. So a few days after this full moon, Pluto will transition back into Aquarius. And we have Mars, I believe it's now at 3 degrees of Leo. So moving deeper into the sign of Leo, Mars will be having a retrograde at the end of the year, however. And at that point in time, when Mars comes back into opposition with Pluto, Pluto will be in the sign of Aquarius. And that's a whole different video, a whole different energy. I don't want to go too deeply down that trajectory right now. I want to stay focused on this particular energy that we're experiencing. But it is very much, in some senses, the battle of the wills, the battle of the higher will versus the lower will, where it is that we're still trying to hold on to some old understanding, I suppose that you could say. And something that I didn't know if I was going to share in this video or not, but I guess I am going to share it because it feels relevant as we're talking about this right now, is a download that I got regarding what's going on in the collective right now. Now, from a higher viewpoint, I suppose you could say, from a more detached viewpoint, or from a viewpoint that sees all angles, or at least as many angles as, we're able to see being incarnated in these physical vessels. Like I said, enlightenment, I don't believe is something you can achieve within this lifetime. I don't think that pure unbiased perspective is either. But from, we could say perhaps a higher viewpoint, we can see how the US election and the results of that have really brought in this timeline that is allowing for the deepening and the quickening, I suppose you could say, of the dismantling of the shadow government. This is what we have been seeing and what we're going to see in even more earnestness moving forward. Now, as this is going on, we have two very clear sides or energies here. And we've been seeing this energy for a really long time. Since 2020, we've been seeing this stark contrast as the bifurcation or the splitting of the earths began to happen and people are living in different realities, where the false matrix, the 3D reality, the 4D and the 5D, with many people existing in that in-between space. If you want to learn more about this, I'll link a video at the end of this one about the 3D, 5D split. So there are a lot of people who are very upset right now, who are mourning the loss of their freedom, not understanding that in a higher sense, what we are actually achieving right now is a far deeper liberation and freedom, not on the individual rights and all of the individual energies that people are hyper focused on, but in the larger sense. That shadow government is being dismantled. People are gaining back their sovereignty. They're gaining back their minds. And we are solidifying or going to be solidifying in place the laws that allow for freedom of speech to continue, for these discussions to continue, for people to continue to gain different perspectives, hear different perspectives. The mind control is breaking. And all of the different tenets of the shadow government are being disbanded piece by piece. And we're going to see this intensifying and quickening, like we said, as the years progress here. However, there are a lot of people who are still very much entrenched in that false matrix programming. They don't really understand what's going on. And so they are on the surface, they're feeling as though they are mourning the loss of individual rights. And that is very scary. And that feels very real. So I want everyone to hold some space for that. And if you were here watching this video and you're feeling triggered, you're feeling some type of way about what I'm saying, know that I love you, I honor you, I respect you. This is all part of this journey. Everybody is experiencing their own awakenings. And with Uranus, these can be rude awakenings. Everyone has to go through their own individual journey, right? We're all in our own individual story, having our own individual awakening process. All right, so I honor everybody, whatever step of that process they are at. I love you all infinitely, and we must love all infinitely. What I'm trying to explain is the energy of what's going on here. So on the surface, it seems like there are specific rights that are being taken away. And this feels like what the problem is. But really, on a deeper level, what's being mourned is the death or the end of the false matrix. Many people have been stuck within that illusion, within those confines, and it has felt safe and comfortable because it is known. Even the struggling financially and struggling to make ends meet, struggling against these forces, right, that want to control us, that want to dominate us. There's always someone to fight that has a face, that has a name. And it's much easier. And all humans, right? And I'm not discarding myself from this or any of us, right? We are moving out of that energy of duality and polarity. And we're seeing that intensify as that energy is breaking up. It's almost like it has to come to a climax, to a point of intensity before it can dissipate and we can move toward unity. And so we're all, in a sense, even when we talk about the false matrix, right? When we talk about the archons, and if you guys want to know about that, I'll link another video at the end of this one. When we talk about these dark entities or aliens, these what are also referred to as the globalists, like the cabal, the shadow government, the deep state, whatever, different people have different names for them. Even that is a them versus us, right? It's something to fight against. We have needed this energy of something to rail and fight against. This is the story that humanity has carried for so long. It's the focus of every movie, every book. There is an antagonist and a protagonist. There is a heroine or a hero and a villain. And so some of us are beginning to see through this. We're beginning to see that, yes, that on a larger scale, these energies, this is the game that we're playing. This is the storyline where we're learning how to step into our power, but it is just a storyline. And ultimately, we hold that frequency of love. We stand in our sovereignty and we do not allow for attachments. We do not allow for these energies to anchor us into their game, right? But we also have to see through it, see beyond it. And so it's different levels that we graduate from this game. At first, it's I'm fighting the person that I can see, right? The person that's trying to take away my right to fill in the blank. The person that is harming these innocents or these less fortunate, the person that is oppressing, right? We're fighting against that. And so a lot of people, it's like that fight is addictive, right? That fight is what we know. And ultimately, and we're all, like I said, even those of us who feel like we're more awakened, that we see the bigger picture, we're still in this fight. And ultimately, what we're going to realize is that it's not an external foe that we're fighting against. It's within our own selves. This battle exists within us. And when we cease to fight this battle within, that is when we see peace without. That is when we see unity without. Remember, as within, so without. So everyone is in their own version of this battle right now. And there are certain versions of this battle that are more comfortable. The battle itself is comfortable, right? All of the struggles are comfortable because they're known. And it's much easier to fight a battle with an externalized force than to realize that the real battle is raging within and to have to go within. And so I'm feeling like whatever stage of your awakening process you're in right now, that may be something that people are coming to terms with or having a realization around. The real battle's not out there. It's in here. And this is an invitation to go deeper within. Now, going back to what I was saying about the collective right now in this split, those who are in that matrix energy right now still, the ones who didn't want to see and are really, they're fighting the breakdown of the false matrix because that is the reality that they've known. Even though it's uncomfortable, it's comfortable in its uncomfortability. And so that is the deeper battle that's going on, that's being externalized right now. It's that fear of like, what's next? It's that fear of the known opponent, the known reality, and the dissolution of that. So that is a really big energy. And the media, all of these external forces are going to continue to try to keep people in that sadness, in that anger, in that frustration, because that continues to feed the false matrix. That's the only way the false matrix can continue to exist, is by feeding off of that energy. Their fuel sources are getting lower and lower every day. All right. Their control over the minds and emotions of the human population is diminishing more and more every day. So one of their last strongholds is to create as much emotion in people as possible. This is why it's important to cultivate that detachment. Some say that even those who are super excited and ecstatic about the timeline and the results of the election and everything that's going on right now are contributing to feeding the false matrix through their emotional energy. I see that as a two-sided thing. I see that feeling that joy and that excitement, that is putting that energy that's going to call more of that timeline in. So I see it as a positive thing. When it becomes a negative thing is when we are attached to it, when we think we have to have this leader or this group of new leaders in order for the ascension to happen, in order for us to be okay, in order for the timeline to continue in this trajectory. When we give away our power to them, because it's all giving away your power in any way you put it. What we need to understand is that we collectively, through our vibration, through our attention, through our refusal to allow our minds and our hearts and our emotions to be controlled negatively, we have created it is through our own healing, our own growth, and our own unified intention that we have allowed for this new timeline to manifest. So what we see in the external world in a positive sense is a reflection of what's within and all the work that we've done, just as what we've seen in a negative sense has been that. When that three-dimensional mentality and outlook was the predominant collective consciousness, that's when we experienced that reality. That was the larger collective reality. Now that energy is switching, that energy is changing. And we have a new reality emerging. And I apologize there. I had my earbuds in because there was a lot of noise going on around my house, and I wanted to make the experience of listening a bit more smooth. So one of my earbuds just died. So I'm going back to the traditional mic. There may be some background noise. I know many people enjoy hearing the little one running around and playing, so he will very likely be in the background moving forward. But we can see, as we were saying, the collective reality shifting because the predominant vibration is different. And so this is going to be a full moon where some people are really working through this dissolution of the false matrix on a subconscious level, and on a conscious level, they're really working through having to surrender to what is, how to find love, how to find peace within what is perceived as chaos. And others perhaps are getting a deeper revelation around where the true fight is. And we're going more inside. And where it is that we have been fighting our own evolution, we're beginning to become ready to make those final shifts, those changes that are being called for. And I feel this really completing with the Uranus transit as well. So Uranus is going to enter Gemini at the end of 2025, then retrograde back into Taurus. And in 2026, Uranus is going to be firmly within the sign of Gemini. And this is also the time when we are experiencing the US's Uranus return. The US's Uranus is at 8 degrees of Gemini. And something that some people on here will find interesting as well is that Donald Trump's Uranus is in Gemini. His Sun, North Node, and Uranus are all conjunct in the 10th house in the sign of Gemini. And I believe it's like 8 degrees away from the United States' Uranus, so it's in a loose conjunction. With Uranus, we would say very loose because Uranus moves slowly, but still I think it's considering the nature of Uranus and the nature of this role that he plays as this catalyst for change and awakening, sometimes through the energy of chaos, right? Uranus is the change bringer. It is the great awakener. It is also the bringer of chaos. But remember, what is that quote that I want to say right now? Something about what is chaos for the spider? What is chaos for the fly? Something about chaos for the fly and order for the spider or something like that. So it's like essentially, from our human perspective, it's chaos. From the higher perspective, it's all divinely orchestrated to awaken people, to create these huge, massive quantum shifts that this ascension process is. This quantum leap through timelines and consciousness can only occur as profoundly. I mean, it'll occur either way. But through this timeline that we are on right now, it is occurring the quickest. Uranus is not known. Yes, Uranus moves slow as far as how it moves through the heavens, but the changes and the shifts that Uranus produces are often very fast, very unexpected. You can liken Uranus to the Tower card in the tarot or to a bolt of lightning. However, we can see in the sign of Taurus, this has been a bit of a more measured change. When Uranus enters Gemini, Gemini is speed, Gemini is communication. It is social contracts, social behavior, the distribution of information. It is social media. It is ideas and knowledge and facts and figures. Gemini is perhaps the quickest energy. It is the most mercurial of the signs that Mercury rules, Virgo being the other one. So we're going to see this change accelerating as Jupiter moves into Gemini, or rather, as Uranus moves into Gemini in 2026. There's one final energy that is rather important here that I want to talk about, but I feel as though there's a reason that the energy of Jupiter, who is currently in the sign of Gemini, is also coming into my consciousness right now. So I feel as though this wants to be talked about first. And we're going to touch on this much more in later videos because we have a conversation going on between Mercury in Sagittarius and Jupiter retrograde in Gemini that's going to continue and be revisited as Mercury goes through its retrograde in Sagittarius later this month. Mercury will station retrograde on November 25th and will remain in retrograde until it stations direct on December 15th of this year, moving from 22 degrees of Sagittarius to 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So currently in that pre-shadow period. And this is going to be a really interesting Mercury retrograde in the sign of Sagittarius that we're really going to see playing into these energies of our belief systems, our morals, our ideals, our values, and a revisiting of those themes and energies. And it makes perfect sense when we look at everything that's going on in the United States right now. The United States, and I reference the United States a lot, of course, because this is where I live. I know there are people from all over the world here on this channel. However, for the United States, we are a Sagittarius rising in our chart. So that Sagittarius energy, very, very important here. So this is going to be a powerful retrograde that's going to continue to assist people in integrating, in understanding, in coming to deeper truths within themselves, surrounding what is happening and how they're digesting the information, and how they're just simply digesting this experience. And this plays directly into the energies that we just talked about, describing everybody's understanding and processing on whichever level of consciousness they're processing it, of the fall of the false matrix. Now, Jupiter in Gemini, currently in retrograde, is in an opposition with Mercury during this full moon. And they'll continue having conversation, as we said, as Mercury goes through its retrograde and then tracing back across its shadow period again after the retrograde ends. So that means going from 6 degrees of Sag, where Mercury completes its retrograde, back to 22 degrees of Sag, where the retrograde began. And Jupiter retrograde in Gemini is also about information. Sagittarius is about the deeper beliefs, ideals, morals, values, the greater wisdom, seeing the bigger picture. Whereas Gemini is about the facts, the figures, the information. So with Jupiter retrograde, there's really been a search for these facts, these figures, this information. This has been a journey through how it is that we gather information, how it is that we discern information, how it is that we expand through the new information, the new facts that are coming in. So this is a really, really huge energy in and of itself And with Mercury adding into the conversation here, this is a real opportunity for expansion of our perspective, for examining those belief systems, what still resonates, what doesn't, for releasing what no longer fits, and expanding into a larger understanding, a greater understanding of the world around us, our place in it, and what our specific role is amidst all of this chaos and confusion that is going on in the world. So that is a really big energy as well. Venus, being the ruler of this full moon, is a big energy too. And Venus is in what's known as a T-square with the nodes of fate. This is the North Node and the South Node. The South Node representing our past, representing the energies that we are comfortable with. Once again, our comfort zone, because we've experienced and perfected and worked with that energy in past lives. The North Node representing where we're going, what we're evolving into, the energy that's going to get us there. So as a collective, we've been working with this Libra Aries axis here, with the Libra energy as the energy that we are releasing, but also that we are calling upon to balance this new energy that we're beginning to explore with the North Node of Aries, relating to courage, relating to confidence, relating to our masculine energy, how it is that we relate to that energy, how it is that we use that energy, how it is that we get what we want, and how it is that we learn to put ourselves first. So Venus here in the sign of Capricorn, she's in an interesting position. Venus in Capricorn is very ambitious. She can sometimes be very traditional, a little bit reserved. She knows what she wants, and she's really on a trajectory to get it. Sometimes Venus in Capricorn can be a bit concerned with keeping up with the Joneses, with the social climbing, with the status and recognition. And with this push-pull here, we're going to notice where it is that we are wanting to continue to strive forward with something and put ourselves first, put our own desires, our own needs, our own wants first, but also where it is that we're being called with that South Node to consider other people, the impact that we're having on others, our relationships, perhaps the expectations of us within society and cultural norms within our close relationships. This is sort of the push-pull energy that we're experiencing here. Something that I found fascinating about this was that the South Node is also conjunct the vertex in the chart for this full moon. Now, the vertex represents a point of fate and destiny, and it represents the connections that come into our lives that really shake us up, that really help us to evolve. And with the South Node here, I was feeling that this could be in relation to getting a deeper understanding of past relationships, past connections, and how it is that they helped us to grow and what the lessons were that we were meant to learn there. It could also have to do with people perhaps re-entering, especially around Mercury retrograde time, where it's happening 10 days after this full moon. People re-entering our lives to complete old soul contracts, or new people entering to help us complete those lessons that perhaps we hadn't fully completed with the last person. So this is a really interesting energy here. And I do my charts, of course, for the United States. I usually base them in New York, New York, because that feels the most America to me. That's just like, in my opinion, that should be the capital of the United States, in the sense that, like, when people think of the United States, if you were to say name one city in the United States for somebody, and you guys who are international can tell me if this is true, what's the one state and the one city that people would really feel like they experienced America if they got to visit? It's probably New York City. So that's why I always do my charts for that. So that may influence the vertex being with that South Node. But this is what I really feel this coming through strongly with this. So pay attention to what lessons are wrapping up. Remember, we still have Saturn and Pisces wrapping up those lessons, those karmic lessons. So this is a big theme and a big energy that we're working with right now. What I also found interesting was, and we also had Vesta conjunct the South Node and the part of fortune. So there's a lot of value within those lessons that we've been learning regarding that South Node in Libra energy and Venus in particular. And yes, Venus does relate to partnership. She does relate to love, desire, as well as our creativity, our feminine energy. So one of her signs that she rules is Libra. So there's a deep connection here. There's something profound that's shifting here. Perhaps some way that Venus, also in a sign that represents the status quo, perhaps even more so than Taurus, that sign of Capricorn, really deciding, do I go against the grain? Do I do something unexpected perhaps? Do I do something that suits me? Do I stand up for what I want and need? Or do I fall back into the old energy? But also Venus understanding that there is a deep value in our connections and that there is a deep fulfillment that can come from partnership and connection, right? We don't want to burn all of our bridges. So there's a compromise that has to be made here. And this is where Libra energy excels. So this is where we call on that Libra energy. Venus calls on that Libra energy to say, how can we find a solution that if it doesn't make everybody happy, at least nobody feels like they're losing completely, right? How can we find a solution that everybody can live with? Because with that Vesta in Libra energy, Vesta represents the home and the hearth, but it represents the fire of our own soul. So there's this deep need to remain true to the fire of our own soul, but realize that part of that energy and part of the way we experience that deep fulfillment, it's not just about what we want and what we go after and our worldly desires and pursuits. It's not about our social standing, our social status. It's also about the connections that we have, the partnerships that we had. I'm feeling for somebody, there's some people watching this, it's going to be like a pinnacle that you're getting ready to reach in your career. And it's that energy of who's coming with me, who has supported me, who has stood by me. It's that energy of like, who has stood behind me in order to help make this possible. And really remembering and recognizing those people. And it's, like we said, finding that balance, finding that compromise of how do I continue to grow myself in the ways I want to grow myself without leaving behind the people that matter and without making them feel as though they don't. How can I allow myself to matter and allow other people to matter at the same time? Where is that balance? It's sort of like walking a tightrope is what I feel like Venus is doing right now. And Venus being the feminine energy within each and every single one of us. And I have to say, as I'm closing here, that I love that my son is screaming in the background right now, as well as our family friend who cares for him while I'm doing these videos and stuff, because that's the energy right now, right? That's the energy of freedom, rebellion, this wild, chaotic energy that we're experiencing during this full moon, that energy that's shaking us up. I'm being drawn to the analogy that we use sometimes of the glass, right? The glass full of water and the dirt that settled on the bottom. And when it's settled on the bottom, the glass looks clear. But when we shake it up, right, the glass looks like it's full of dirt and debris. And it's like, where did that come from? It was there all along. It was just settled on the bottom. It was just lurking almost imperceptibly under the surface. And so this full moon for some people is going to shake up that glass. And we're going to see what's there. But we have an opportunity then to filter that out, to become clearer. We have the North Node in loose out of sign conjunction to Neptune right now. Neptune in retrograde, removing the illusions, seeing beyond the veil. Neptune also representing that journey with the North Node there to our higher self. That journey along our path of our highest dharma. So our soul is beckoning us forward. It's beckoning us into the unknown with that Aries energy. It's calling for that courage. It's calling for that confidence. It's saying it's okay to shake that glass up. It's okay to ruffle some feathers. Venus in Capricorn really doesn't like having her feathers ruffled. But she can adapt. You can adapt. The opposite of Venus in Capricorn is Venus in Cancer. That is always a resolving energy of a T-square, or not Venus in Cancer rather, but it's the energy of Cancer. All right, so 4 degrees of Cancer is the balancing energy to all of this. That's the home. Once again, it's nurturing. It's the energy of nurturing ourselves, being gentle with ourselves, nurturing others. It's also the energy of our intuition and really tapping into our intuition and our emotion. If you don't know which way to go, feel into it. How do you feel when you think about a possible choice or decision? How do you feel when you think about the other? And which feeling is worse is essentially kind of what it comes down to. You might feel uncomfortable going one way, but if the other way feels worse, then maybe that discomfort of the unknown is actually the best solution, the best choice. Maybe that pushing out of the comfort zone is what is needed. So feel into it. If you don't know what to do, that's always the answer. With this full moon as well, right? We got that sun in Scorpio. Like we said, feel into it. It's all about learning how to use our emotion, right? Like when we're overwhelmed by our reactive emotions, all right, that's the difference. That's what Spirit wants to communicate right now. There are 2 types of emotions. There are the reactive kind that come up when we're triggered by something, right? And that trigger is, of course, an outward manifestation of an inner reality that wants to be exposed, that wants to be understood, that wants to be recognized and acknowledged. And then there's the other type of emotion, the emotion that's not a reaction to an outside force or stimulant. And that emotion, that is, well, I guess they're both guiding us in different ways, but that's the one that was more closely linked to our intuition. That's showing us the truth about how we feel about something outside of the conditioning and the wounding that is related to the energy, the emotion that comes up when we're triggered, right? That deeper emotional guide. That guide within your gut. Trust your gut. That's what Spirit wants some people to know right now as well. Taurus energy, very connected to the body. Cancer energy, which we talked about as being the resolving energy to that T-square, very connected to the gut, to the stomach. They call the stomach the second brain. So pay attention to those gut feelings right now. I feel like that message was specific for somebody with something with the gut. Letting your gut be your guide. As funny as that sounds. All right. That might be a mantra that somebody's been working with or something that's been coming up for you around go with your gut. I remember my father, he used to always tell me no guts, no glory. Right? So guts as courage as well. I think that honestly is a great closing energy for this video, right? No guts, no glory. That's really what this full moon is saying. If you want the glory, it's time to step outside of the comfort zone. It's time to do the uncomfortable thing. It's time to acknowledge the uncomfortable feeling, the uncomfortable truth, and then to continue moving forward. We can drag out this process as long as we want to a certain extent, right? But isn't it better to rip the Band-Aid off now? Some of us, it's like we drag out the process because it's more comfortable to dream of something than to actually have it. To get ready to try as opposed to doing the thing and failing. And I do failing like this because we know that failure isn't real, right? The only time we truly fail is when we give up. Otherwise, we're just learning, we're perfecting, we're growing. No guts, no glory. That's it. That glory is waiting for you on the other side of the thing that you have been resisting. So it's up to each and every single one of us to figure out, what is it that's been holding me back from stepping into my glory, from shining brightly, from taking that leap? What is the fear? And am I ready to release that? What is the change that I have been called to make? And where has the resistance been rooted? Where does that resistance come from? And am I ready now to move beyond that? And sometimes we don't need to know. That's that North Node in Aries energy. We don't always need to understand. So if you're like, man, that resistance, it's been so strong for me, but I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know how to move through it because I don't understand it. Just move. That's a big part of what this North Node in Aries has been teaching us. Sometimes the only way through it is through it. We can get lost in the analysis paralysis. We don't necessarily always need to know why. Sometimes it's just about doing it, even though we're afraid. Sometimes that's the lesson. And sometimes once we push through it, in hindsight, we recognize what the fear was, what the limitation was, what the lesson was. Sometimes the lesson or the needed action is just the action. It's just to get going. All right. I love you guys so much. I'll talk to you soon. If you haven't yet subscribed, go ahead and do so right now. Click the bell as well to get notified about new videos. And go ahead and like this video if you have not yet and you are still watching. You belong here. Welcome to the tribe.